What is up, all of my beautiful freaking people? Welcome back to another episode of FML Talk. I am so glad that we are back and rolling full speed ahead. And today I am bringing back Brittany Jade from last week, and she is joined by her husband, Wyland. It is a crazy experience to listen to last week's episode and then hear the two of them sit before us and talk now that they are fully back together. I can't wait for you guys to hear this episode. Sit back, grab a drink, and welcome to FML Talk.
Oh my God.
Wait, how old was the other girl?
19. Can you believe that shit?
Hey, this is Gabrielle Stone.
Good book?
He did what? 48 hours?
What a dick.
Yeah, but have you seen all the photos on her Instagram?
And this is FML Talk.
Oh, no, she didn't.
So before we jump into this interview today, I want to talk about what I got from hearing it. So we recorded this last week, which was only, a few months after the first interview recorded. So the first interview that I did with Brittany recorded in January, and then the second one recorded at the end of April. So it had been a few months' time. And it was really interesting for me, you guys, to sit on the receiving end of all of this, because I was just as shocked as everybody else was. But the one thing that I really took away from it is the fact that there are two sides to every story. And I've always kind of gotten irritated with that because I see so many of the triggered men on my viral videos being like, yeah, well, there's two sides to every story. She must have not been like sucking dick good enough and cleaning the house and, just being misogynistic idiots. And I've always kind of like, rolled my eyes at the whole there's two sides to every story. But obviously there is. I do know that is a fact. Whether or not the other side is correct or not is a whole different issue. But the fact is, this episode is a perfect example of the fact that there are two sides to every story. And I didn't really know what I was getting into. I had never met Brittany's husband, Wyland. I had only briefly seen him on social media videos. Like, I didn't even know what his voice sounded like. So this was totally like blind for me to walk into with this. And, you're always kind of like, God, is he going to be pissed off about any of the things that he says? Am I going to ask him anything that's going to trigger him? And I remember when I did my interview with Mike Cosson, how nervous I felt because I didn't want to overstep. And in light of recent events, with realizing that Mike was not 100% truthful when he did this interview, I really wanted to go into this one with Brittany and Wyland and ask the tough questions and not be afraid to like figure out if people were lying, if people were telling the truth. So it was really interesting for me to sit down with both of them after I had just proofed Brittany's episode. And, y'all heard it last week. Like, it was rough. Like, if I was the guy hearing that, that's a gnarly interview to listen to. But they are in a very different place now. They have done a lot of healing, and it was really interesting to not only get Wyland's perspective of it, but see the growth that they had both made changes of. They had both looked back and acknowledged things and really demonstrated how two people can, potentially grow and heal together. And that was really beautiful to witness. But you guys will notice in this interview that there are some things that don't add up. And when I asked Brittany about it, and you'll hear this later in the interview, I was like, okay, so can you take ownership that maybe some of the things that you were experiencing were solely on your warped perspective of when you were under the influence? And she was like, yeah. And that's a huge thing to be able to sit here and publicly say, to be like, yeah, some of the things that I said that made my husband or ex at the time look really bad might have just been how I was perceiving things. And I want to touch on this because I think that happens so often in relationships where we get in a fight and our anger is what is driving us. And when we finally take a step back and look at the situation with a calm and clear mind, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I didn't handle that properly, or maybe they reacted that way because in their perception of the situation, I was doing something that was triggering to them. And it's so hard to do that in the moment when you're in the thick of it or when you're not agreeing with someone. I know we have a lot of people that are still co-parenting with their exes, which is so fucking hard. I'm thankful that I don't have to do it, but I watch Tay do it. I get DMs all the time about how difficult it is. And the bottom line is it's challenging in any dynamic to really make sure that you are being aware of the other person's perspective. So it was really interesting to me to see Brittany recount the things that she said back in January, which she had obviously at the time believed and felt wholeheartedly, and look back and say, oh, okay, well, that might have not been exactly how it went down. That was how I experienced it. And Wyland at the same time took a lot of responsibility as well. So it was really a neat, like, full circle moment to hear the interview from January and then sit down and interview both of them. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And without further ado, the newly back together couple, Brittany and Wyland. I'm so excited that you both decided to join me for an episode, because after I went back and proofed Brittany's episode, and now knowing that you guys are back together, I was like, holy shit, we have to bring both of them on to see how this happened, because y'all shocked everybody when you posted that picture kind of announcing that you guys were getting back together. So it was very clear when we recorded back in January that you guys were like not a thing. You were co-parenting in a healthier way, but you guys were definitely not together. So tell me how we got from doing that interview to where you guys are at now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so crazy. I don't even remember like exactly everything I said. Like, you said you went back through it, but okay. So it first started, I think I told you, like, we had just started this whole co-parenting thing, and I was like very set on it, like strictly being co-parenting. But, I think we like just slowly but surely like started spending more time together, because on Thanksgiving of last year, so that was November, I dropped the kids off and he hugged me, and I just, we were like no contact. We hadn't talked for 6 months. So I remember being just like, it was shocking, that we were even like close, and like,
I asked for a hug.
Yes, you asked for a hug. And then I think it's just like slow, like just like it really slowly like happened. And I don't even remember there being like a specific moment for me that I was like, oh, I think like we're going to get back together. But I remember like having a conversation, sitting on the couch, and I remember saying like, how am I going to tell TikTok? And that to me was like, okay, Brittany, you're really serious about this.
Yeah, totally. And so we'll later on in the interview, we'll get to kind of like the different responses you got from our stupid world of social media. But Wyland, I want to like talk to you a little bit about because we heard on last week's episode all the stuff that Brittany experienced in the relationship, but we all know that there's two sides to every story. And I want to kind of get what your perspective was when you were dealing with, when she was in the height of her addiction and when you guys were going to court. So kind of like take me back to, I guess, kind of the beginning, and tell me like how the relationship was for you on your end. Like, where were the weak spots and the problems for you?
Yeah. So I guess, let's see. So going back to, before it all escalated, before it started to even progress into us becoming separated and working towards a divorce, I remember kind of just slipping into this state of mind where I just became complacent. And it was kind of after my mom had passed away. And I remember the effort that I would put in being a husband kind of just got pushed to the side, and I just started to become complacent and not really not really care. I mean, as far as our marriage and how it was, because it's always working on trying to progress it. But so that obviously didn't help. And then within that, I started drinking as well myself, which I knew, drinking to numb the pain from my mom passing away, obviously wasn't a good idea for myself, but then also for her with her history and our history together with alcohol. So that just added more fuel to the fire. Through everything that happened, just making the wrong decisions, just listening to people, not listening to my heart, not listening to not so much what she was telling me, but what I should have known as a father and as a man she would have needed, and which was helping her. And instead, I got into that state of mind where, started with complacency, but then it just turned into us being kind of enemies, and we just started to slip further and further apart, and I wasn't there to help her. And it's just a horrible time looking back on it now, but so that obviously the attorneys were a huge factor in my
But they obviously weren't rooting for us to get back together.
No.
Right. I remember from my divorce, every time I heard from my attorney, it was like, this fucking asshole. And
Oh yeah.
so like they make you, because you're going through divorce, so you're automatically pitted against each other. So do you think your drinking started, like the problem with your drinking on your side, Wyland, started before your mom's death or after?
I would probably say when she got sick, which is because it was such a curveball hearing that she got cancer. We moved from Wisconsin with our daughter, and kind of just started to get situated. It flew by, and then out of nowhere when she became sick, I started to numb it right away, which I noticed was obviously the wrong tactic for anything.
I think it's crazy when we think like the stuff that I went through that I needed him to be there for me for, he didn't know how to do. And the stuff that he was going through, like I didn't know. I never dealt with a death, close to my family. I didn't know how to deal with that with him. And so that's where the alcohol always just came on board. But he was always, so we met in sober living at 19. His thing was like weed and pills though. My thing was always alcohol. And so he never had he could have 2 drinks and be done. He drank a lot and he drank every night, but it wasn't like to the blackout point like that I was drinking. And so I think when I really got bad, it was like we were both in denial because he didn't want to have to stop drinking.
Yeah, and it was certainly not helping her, the fact that I would, enable, okay, let's at least have, a 6-pack in the fridge.
Right. Oh no, it'd be like I'll take my alcohol out of the house, like no beer, no White Claw, no vodka, but he got to keep his whiskey. And then sure enough, I was like drinking whiskey when I never drank whiskey. And
well, it was almost like it was a perfect storm. It was like Brittany was going through needing to have 0 of it in her life, and Wyland was going through something that, not that it was healthy, but in his way, the only way to numb that pain was what you needed to have none of around. So it's almost like a perfect storm, so that's really interesting. Do you think that everything with your mom, Wyland, was kind of like the catalyst of when you and Brittany's relationship started to kind of break? Or were there problems before that?
I'd say that's when it started to spiral. And again, that's when I started to become more complacent, and my issues started to really build up. But yeah, it's difficult to pinpoint looking back on where it all stemmed from, but I'd say that's a big factor for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the actual $100,000 divorce that never fully went through. Because I know I've posted stories on TikTok about how my divorce bill was like above 20 grand and we didn't even have kids or anything to fucking fight over. So I know how expensive it can get so quick, but kind of tell me a little bit about what went into the expensiveness of it all.
Yeah. That's like the one thing we haven't addressed yet. It's like the one last thing because everyone's like, why was it 100,000? I was like, well, when I find out, I'll let you know.
Right.
Because I want to like make sure I have like a really good answer, but it's just, I think it's just a lot of things adding up. So he had an attorney 6 months before me. So you got an attorney. So first we went to mediation. So we spent a few thousand there. We were trying to do this together. Well, no, first you went to your attorney and then we went to mediation and then we went back to his attorney. And I think he had to file an ex parte. He got custody of the kids because of my drinking, like that all added up on his side. And then when I finally got an attorney, like 6 months into this whole thing, I had fully lost custody. I was like a big mess, you know. I had to get this whole case up pretty much, like, because he made me out to be like I was the bad guy when I know I wasn't the only bad guy. So I was like, okay, if you're gonna, because we had agreed when we went to mediation, we had things about him that we weren't gonna bring up. We had things about me that we weren't gonna bring up. We just, you know, that nobody can ever know about all these things because it'll be a mess. And like, I literally remember saying like, we will be spending $1,000 of money on a divorce that we don't have. And it's so funny that we actually ended up doing that.
Right.
But yeah, so then when I had to build this case up, like against him and I like, you know, I had stuff too. It was just like a mess of our attorneys being like, oh my gosh, these people both have issues. Like now we got to keep these kids out of foster care. Because that was actually really close to that. Thankfully because of COVID and the court system and everything, but it was like June of last summer, like we actually got a letter that's saying that neither of us were fit to parent and that the kids were going to be, that they recommended they be taken from both of us. And thankfully at that point, like, I don't know, you had been working on yourself, started going to parenting classes. I had a few months sober by then. So thankfully we got it all like figured out because yeah, it could have been even more of a mess, but it just adds up.
Oh, I know. Even just having an attorney for 6 months period, like just the attorney fees alone.
Just an email, just one email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's unreal. So I want to go back to kind of like the timeline of last week's episode, and Brittany talks about what the first time she wanted to go see a therapist. And Wyland, you kind of had a pushback on that. You were kind of like not about the therapy. Why was that? Do you think that there was a reason you were not wanting to do that with her or let her do that?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great question. That's a good point that she brought up too, because so I didn't need a therapist. Who needs a therapist? Only weak, people that are weak, mentally unstable people. I could work through this. I didn't need that. Like,
who is someone else to tell us how to live our lives or what we're doing?
Exactly. And it only took me, going through everything that I did, the support groups, the reading books, several therapists myself throughout this time, looking back, how ridiculous that mindset was, because of how I see it now, how everybody needs a therapist. Everybody, whether it's he's done more
therapy than me now, but at the beginning, I'm sorry, this is not the thing you're going to notice. Everyone's always like, oh my God, Brittany, let him talk. You're so bossy. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is just our personalities. Like I interrupt all the time. And then I like we have to have this conversation. So I'm like, I'm so sorry. Do you feel like I'm talking over you? And he's like, no, not at all. And yeah. Okay.
You're good. So you don't feel that way anymore. That was like a past belief and unfortunately a lot of men are brought up in a way where that's viewed as weak and that's viewed as you have a problem. And there's a huge stigma around therapy. And I'm so glad to hear that you have now changed your perspective on that. I think it's so important that when we have any type of platform, we show people that therapy is good for anyone and everyone. I mean, like, even if nothing's wrong, go talk about some shit,
Yes.
So the main thing for me that kind of opened my eyes also for therapy was the group that I kind of got plugged into was a group of fathers, and then we would talk. There'd be a Zoom call every day of the week, So I jump on after work, and this was at a point in my life where I had the most pain that I felt, when we had separated, and it was just going through that. And
He joined a dad's group on Zoom, and I talked shit on TikTok.
Right.
How
It's like to each their own.
Yeah.
it is what it is. But basically, like what I found was, okay, by being vulnerable, by not being afraid and stepping out of my comfort zone, acting like it's okay to talk to these men, not pointing fingers or anything, but just like telling them my emotions, what I was going through. It was so like unorthodox for me at the time, but I did it. And in doing so, I realized day by day, it didn't fix anything, but they helped carry me through day by day, where I was okay. Like I could fall asleep, wake up the next day, and look forward to speaking, getting my emotions out.
Yeah.
And then obviously with the therapist as well, that filled that gap as well. But
now
so,
looking back on it, now that you've stepped into that and are open to and like proactive with therapy, do you look back on the time where you kind of like projected onto Brittany and made her feel like that wasn't a good decision?
oh yeah.
And that like must feel so
I remember
different
at
now
one
that
time
you're on this side.
specifically saying like, that therapist that you're going to, she's the reason we're getting a divorce.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like,
and at the time, looking back in my mind, I was like, okay, well, this therapist heard, Brittany's side of the
one-sided.
story,
Mhm.
Right.
and she's now making accusations, claims about me, and that was me kind of bubbling up and being like, well, that's not fair, and like,
And for the longest time, he never took any accountability whatsoever. Like, and that was another thing too. Like, we tried many times to make this work, but the main reason every single time that it didn't work out was because he straight up, he was like, no, I can't see this was all your fault. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. This was, all on you. And I was like, you really can't see it. And like, he'd be like, no. And I'm like, okay, then like,
or I would say, oh, well, I already apologized. Like that.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's why, like, that's what the main, I think, difference is this time around is like, you really do, you've taken accountability for your actions, just like him being willing to talk about it. Like, I know this is a lot, this whole life that I have now, with social media. And that was like a huge, thing. Cause I was like, you know what, everybody knows about our past. Like, this is my life and I love it. And like, it's become my career now and I'm not willing to like, let it go. So are you willing to be a part of this? Because like, we will go on and we will talk about this all. And we never used to be able to talk about our past ever. We would get into a fight. It'd be terrible, bring it up. Yeah. And this is a lot of talking about our past.
It's uncomfortable, but but it brings growth.
So. Yeah. I was just going to say, like, one of my favorite quotes is there's growth in uncomfortability and growth in fear. So I think that that's beautiful that you guys are able to now walk through that together when that was such a touchy thing in the past. Wyland, what do you think changed to be able to take accountability for some of the stuff?
Yeah. So I suppose, I mean, just my faith, my relationship with my creator, that really shifted, and I kind of did some rebuilding when all of this, started, and we kind of went our separate ways. So that's a huge factor in my heart. And then another thing I'd say is, I guess like when we first came back together this time here in November, and December, January, when we started talking and started to gradually get into things, it was a point where there was no expectations, whereas before I had all this uncertainty. Like, is there a chance? Like, are we going to possibly still stay together? Like, and it was just living in that uncertainty. Without that uncertainty, me knowing that okay, she's no longer mine. I feel like that gave me the ability to kind of, but by losing her, it gave me the ability to apologize without any strings attached, and with taking ownership of full ownership of the own crap that I did to her,
right.
Without saying, but like the reason for like or like explaining myself. It was just a heartfelt apology when I actually did take ownership, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And Brittany, you probably felt like that apology was so much more valid because there was nothing to gain for him at that point. Yeah. It wasn't trying to save your relationship. It was just like a genuine apology.
Right. Yeah. Because we were pretty for sure, you know, that we were done. But I think like he always had these like expectations like in his head of how you wanted me to be, you know, and there's a lot of ways that I didn't live up to these expectations. And then like through our whole separation, you know, and even like, you know, last summer, last winter, like I truly like turned into this person that like I've never been happier in my life. You know, I got sober, I like started telling my story, I started like seeing a purpose for me in my life by myself. And so I got to this point where like I was, you know, genuinely just like so happy. And it's so funny because a lot of people will like leave comments like, oh my gosh, why do you think you need a man? Why blah blah blah? And I'm like, no, like I was fine. Like I wasn't even dating. Like I was very comfortable like where I was at. And so it's just like how this happened, I think was just a lot on just, you know, me seeing the changes in
she learned to
you.
love herself, you know.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think we both did without each other. It was hard, but that and through that I saw confidence in her that I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
That was attractive.
Oh yeah.
That's beautiful.
Confidence.
I love that. Wyland, when Brittany first started coming to you and bringing up terms like gaslighting and narcissism, which I know are really heavy terms now that you've been in therapy and know what those mean, were you aware at all that you were doing any of these things? And are you able to look back now at certain situations and be like, oh, maybe that was gaslighting. Maybe I had some of those tendencies in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny because the first time she brought that phrase up, and again, I'd been in therapy quite a bit, obviously, but the first time she brought it up, gaslighting, I was like, what is that? What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's a term that not a lot of people know.
Yeah, I took a video of him and I was like, you really have no idea what gaslighting is. I still have it. And he was like, why are you taking a video? This is like before we announced we were back together. And I was like, I don't know. I think it's just actually would be really helpful to people someday to realize like gaslighting has started my life, yet he had no idea what it even was. So
right.
Go on.
Yeah. So yeah, no, absolutely. I can see certain scenarios looking back, especially with the alcoholism and how I tried to fix that, you know, through what I thought was best was 100% gaslighting now that I see and understand there's a label for that. And then with the narcissism, I remember we had a conversation and she, you know, she kind of politely told me.
Politely as you can tell someone. Hey, by the way, you're a narcissist.
No, that's not what she said. Actually.
I know.
She you know, she said that which was why I feel it was I was more open to it at the time. Also was because she, you know, wasn't like, hey, you're a narcissist. It was, hey, I really feel like we should get educated on this. And I think that you might be a narcissist. It was just as simple as, okay, well, I mean, if you think that's a problem, if that could be something that I have, I want to know. And so I'm going to address that with, you know, a therapist. And I actually got a new therapist. And so we dug into that. That was one of the main topics. And I was like, if I have this, like, I want to know how to change it. I want you to be able to kind of address it with me as we have our sessions and be like, hey, what you said right there is a class, you know, and just dig deeper into it.
And that's what I've had to do too, is just because it's really weird because he doesn't have like all the classic characteristics. Like he's not like super into himself or anything like that. It's just a lot of the behaviors. And I'll even just like slightly point them out, you know, just day to day. I'll be like, hey, everybody's trying to be nice about it because I think everyone has narcissistic characteristics. Like Kelsey always talks about her narcissism. Like she's not a narcissist, but it's just like certain characteristics of people just like seem like that. And so I'll even like sometimes have to point out things and
it's just not taking offense to it. It's okay. Shoot, I don't want to be that person. So like apologizing and then letting that stick in my brain for the next time a similar situation comes up. How would the old me respond versus what's the new me? What's the true pure heart of version of me? How's that person going to respond? So.
Yeah. I mean, Brittany, that's it. hearing him talk like that is night and day from
Yeah.
what you were talking about in last week's episode. In that episode, Brittany talked about a time that she took a bunch of pills in front of you, and basically you said you weren't trying to kill yourself. It was more of an attention seeking thing. And she looked at you and was like, "Are you going to stop me?" And you said no. Can you kind of describe your perspective of that situation and like what led up to that and what was going on in your brain? Because obviously I can see that you're, a human. You wouldn't just be like, fine, go kill yourself. So there must have been something that was going on your side that had led to all of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to this day, which we've always butted heads at. To this day, I don't know if I didn't see it because I wasn't aware and because of everything, I did not. So when she says that I looked at her and she took them, I don't remember that.
Mhm.
And I don't have any recollection of seeing her do that. Or I would, I feel like I would have made a response, but I don't know.
You don't remember taking
I don't
any pills at all?
I don't remember. I just remember seeing the pill bottle afterwards, after it had escalated. But yeah, I don't, because I can't. Yeah.
I know it's weird. It's just, and honestly, this is a lot of things. Like I talk about how he gaslighted me. I think I gaslight myself because I have a terrible memory. So constantly I'm always like, did that happen? Did we say that? Did this happen?
But I'm sorry that you said the other part of the question. I kind of forgot what you said.
No, yeah. I just wanted to know in your experience that night, what was going on? Like what led up to all of that? Okay, we're going to take a quick break because I have some news. As you might have seen on my Instagram stories, I recently started trying Green Chef, which is the first ever certified organic meal kit company. I was skeptical, but I gotta tell you guys, Tay and I cooked the Chipotle shrimp dish they sent us, and it was freaking restaurant style phenomenal. They have a ton of menu options, all that come pre-measured, prepped, and ready to cook. Honestly, I'm so tired by the end of my days lately. It's been hard to stay on top of my healthy eating, and Green Chef is helping me get it together again. They have keto, vegan, vegetarian. It's all healthy, organic, and fresh. The best part for me is that it allows me to eat healthy and not be bored with the same old foods, and it's actually really affordable. And now, because I have a discount code for you, it'll be even more affordable. You can go to greenchef.com/90FML and use code 90FML to get $90 off, including free shipping. That's greenchef.com/90FML and use code 90FML for $90 off and free shipping. Let me know if you guys try it and what you're cooking up with the #1 meal kit for eating well. All right, let's get back to the show.
What had led up to it was
we had taken a month break. I would take the kids back to Wisconsin for a month that's when I had talked about the possibility. I said, hey, by the way, I just want to keep you fully aware. I'm looking into the possibility of divorce. Like, this is really not good.
A separation.
Okay.
At that time.
Okay. Separation.
And still, to me, that was just as bad. I was like, but.
So we had spent a month apart and we had just gotten back like 2 days. We were home, the kids and I started drinking and we got into a fight. I don't remember why or what.
So it was like, it was one of those days where I came home and she'd been drinking.
You probably accused me of drinking, which I hated. I probably said, this is my first drink.
Which it wasn't, and you were drunk, so it was valid on both sides.
And then it was a matter of escalating where we were, probably screaming at each other, upset, angry. And then not sure what happened after that, but again.
But so the through line of it is always there's like a substance involved usually.
Yeah.
It would get to that level.
Always, yeah. I was just like really crazy. It was like my brain does not work well with drugs and alcohol. Like it turns me into a different person.
Well, yeah. So, and then Wyland, you were the one that actually first filed for divorce, correct?
Correct.
And that, Brittany, you had said kind of blindsided you because you were the one that was more or less thinking about it. And then it kind of came out of nowhere. So
yeah, I was in the hospital by myself and it was just a very weird situation. Like even the doctors, like, I don't know that you said you weren't in a good mind frame. I think you were smoking a lot of weed then.
I was.
But even the doctors at the hospital, like, I know I'm not just making this up because the doctors were like very they're like, we don't know what's going on, but like something is really weird. You know, your husband has come to the hospital, but like he hasn't really like asked to see you. The only thing he said is he wants you to be admitted to the psych ward. And the doctors, you know, they were like, it was always the thing, was like, we don't think you need to go to the psych ward. You don't have any of this. Like, all you need to do is quit drinking, you know? And it just seems so easy when doctors say it like that, but it wasn't that easy at all for me. And because every time they would tell me, you know, I would go to different therapists and different psychiatrists, and they'd always say, we can't diagnose you with anything, Brittany, until you stop drinking. I'd be like, oh, la da da, okay. And just go on my drinking.
Right. So Wyland, when you showed up at the hospital and you had filed for divorce, like what was your end game? What was going on in your head? What were you aiming to do?
Yeah. So I had
as a threat.
Yeah. So let me rephrase that. I didn't actually, which was something we butted heads about as well. It was it was an immature, like ridiculous, stupid decision that I made, but I didn't actually file. I got the paperwork and had a conversation with the attorney and had all the paperwork ready to go, but I hadn't presented it back or anything. What I did in the poor mindset that I was in was, okay, I'm going to use this as like an ultimatum. Like, okay, so I'm like, I have the paperwork. And so that's what I did, which was, like, would you just say gaslighting?
Like a control thing, for sure.
But would be gaslighting also, right? Now that
yeah.
Okay,
yeah, a form of it for sure. Yeah. And good on you for recognizing that.
Yeah.
But as far as looking back to when she was in the hospital, there was a lot of fear at that time. I'm not sure where I was at with the fear that I had, not to blame everything on that, but I just made really poor decisions. And one of those was, you know, okay, she's unfit. Like she, you know, I'm going to have to be taking care of these kids. How am I going to keep them safe? And like, okay, how do we go about this? And like the fear.
And it was crazy because like all of this, it was just like the thought of me, you know, getting me help didn't even cross my mind. Yeah, didn't even cross his mind. It was like, what can I do to like, you know, gain this control? She's clearly unfit to parent. So what do I need to do to make sure, you know?
No, that's a really good point because that didn't cross my mind because I was so caught up in the fact that I tried everything to help her because I couldn't help her, like with the, you know, then she was unfixable.
And that's when you were talking to your attorneys and other people that weren't really looking out for, you know, my best interest. And I feel bad. The
problem is I was never the professional. I was never supposed to be the person that was supposed to help her with this. Should have just helped her.
And what were some of the things that you were doing that you think were trying to help her? Because there was still alcohol in the house and everybody was still drinking, and that was enabling everybody on both fronts. So what were some of the things that were going on where you were like, I've tried to help her, but nothing's working?
Yeah, I guess it was just in my
get me to church.
Get her to church, try to deal with, you know, when the situations would escalate where we would start arguing, try to deal with them differently, you know, psychologically. In my head, I checked those boxes as far as what worked, what didn't work.
He told, you know, he saw.
It was everything me in control of trying to fix it.
You would tell me I needed this magic pill. So he saw me go to different doctor and different psychiatrists and different therapists, and nothing was helping.
So can you now that you've been in therapy and like you have a kind of different tool set, if you will, can you look back on the situation and be like, okay, the things that I should have been doing were taking alcohol out of the situation, going to therapy with her when she asked me, like those were the things that probably would have been more helpful than the things that were being presented?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
I think that's so hard is because like, who are we to say though, like I wasn't in his position. I don't know what I would do if I had to deal with him as an alcoholic. If the roles were switched. And
I will say that, you know, on Brittany's episode, some of the stories she told about her being drunk and like, you know, the stuff she's opened up about on TikTok about how she was at her lowest points. Like, I don't think I'd be able to handle that as a partner. I wouldn't be able to function, and I would have tried to take the kids too. So and I really do see both sides of it.
Yeah. When I was in the hospital that time, you know, that time that he went to the attorney for the first time. So that was 2019. Yeah. 2019. So our first month of dating back when we were 19 and met in 2008, he went through that exact same thing. So he had been going through this with me for 8 years.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Took a bunch of pills. Like it was very weird how my mind would act, just very attention seeking.
Yeah. So let's talk about the withdrawal that you had where you felt like God came into your house and was speaking to you, and it was like playing music, and like it was a wild story, but I want to kind of hear what Wyland's perspective of it, because I remember when she was telling it to me, I was like, okay, wait, you have to clarify. Did he hear all this shit too? Or was it just in your head? And she was like, no, like it was just in me, but like we were both like realizing that some weird shit was going on. So what was it like on your end to witness that and be in that situation?
So I remember it was at the time, like we had been trying to work. We'd been separated. We kind of got back together. Things had happened.
I had been trying to get sober.
Mm-hmm. And you were, or at least I thought at the time, but she was still working through things. And then she had a little hiccup. She went to Mexico. She had a hiccup, and my therapist at the time was like, "That's okay. Like that's what happens. Like they fall off, they get back on. Like it's okay." And so this started to happen, and I was like, oh my gosh, like so I remember she was saying that she was hearing music
like coming from
I never heard any of the stuff she heard. Saw any of the things she saw, but
he believed it.
She painted the picture to me, and it was like an instant replay as it was happening. She was telling me for 90% of probably what she experienced. So I remember, she was hearing music, and I was like, it was weird. And at this point, she was waking up, almost every night at like 2 a.m, and she would wake me up and just be, she was
anger spurts.
And
I would literally wake up and just start lashing out at him, like, how could you have done that to me? Like I was so angry. I couldn't about the.
Just about everything.
How could you take the kids from me? How could you do this? Blah, blah, blah.
And I understood that, like we were working through it. However, the music was started, but then all of a sudden she said, okay, I'm hearing this song, and I knew the song. It was a Christian song, and she never heard the song.
Right.
I knew, like, I knew that she'd never heard that song. Maybe she did now looking back, but she was like saying it to me word for word, like verbatim. And I pulled it up on Google. I was like, those are the exact lyrics. And so for me, it was like, how is this, like, what?
It was crazy. I've never heard these songs before yet. I was singing them. I knew all the lyrics because I was hearing these songs perfectly.
Like, we're talking like verbatim, like per
Bible verses. I was like,
and that's
reading and quoting, and I don't know Bible verses. It was very, very strange. I think it's still to this day, it's like a fine line. Like I definitely was going through withdrawals, but I think it was more.
It's still weird.
Yeah, it's some serious spiritual warfare as far as what I thought, like at the time, like what she was going through. So, but obviously mixed with the alcohol and the drugs and everything.
Right.
In my opinion, there was a lot more that was going on behind the scenes that I was praying for, as it transpired. But it was a very, very scary time. So.
And so at the end of that, Brittany ended up going to the hospital, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you said in your episode, you were like, he just dropped me off and he didn't stay with me. Why wouldn't you stay with her that night? Was that because the kids were at home, or?
Yeah. I was with the kids, and I remember we got my brother to watch the kids for like an hour while I dropped her off, but I had to go back to the kids. So right. I'm not sure how that was.
I just remember like when you just dropped me off at the curb there with the duffel bag.
And I hugged you, and I told you I wish I could have been with you.
Yeah. I just remember feeling like.
I'm sure you felt lost at the time. But
I was like really scared. I was going to the behavioral health unit. Like I literally was like, I packed a bag for like weeks because I thought something was majorly wrong.
Yeah.
Did you come later though? Didn't you come back and meet me at the hospital?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think, Brittany, when you talked about it on the previous episode, I think at the time you were still in such an angry space that it was like, no, and then he just dropped me off and left. And I think that the anger mixed with the withdrawal that you were going through didn't even allow your brain to comprehend like what he just said. He was like, I hugged you and I said, I wish I could be there with you. Like, it was almost like none of that registered.
Yes.
Because you were of what you were going through.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, just like the same with today. Like if I get one hate comment, it doesn't matter. I have 700 amazing comments. I get one hate comment and I cannot get my mind off that one thing. And where same as with this, it's like, yeah, he took me to the hospital, you know, he gave me a hug. I don't remember that. I remember feeling the feeling of walking to the hospital alone and feeling like I was left there.
Yeah. And I get that. I get that. So let's talk about the kids for a second. You have 3 beautiful kids, a daughter and two twin boys. How has this whole scenario with both of you affected them? Because I mean, we all know that even if they're young and they don't know, you know, exactly what's going on, they can pick up on the energy. And this was a lot of stuff like to go through, you know, and like they were still around that the whole time. So how do you think it's affected them, and how do you guys plan on kind of like communicating to them what's gone on in the past, or have you?
Yeah, she's been very open with you know, with her alcoholism, and kind of explain that more so to our daughter. So with our boys, it hasn't really.
Yeah, they were 3 when this all really went down, and so
just right over their heads, they just kind of went along.
Right.
With our daughter,
she's much more aware.
Yeah.
And I think so. What I've just tried to do is just explain, you know, addiction, alcoholism as best as I could to kids, and that's basically that. You know, it's a sickness, and mommy was sick, and that's why all this bad stuff happened. And you know, they're well aware that like alcohol made me sick, and that I'm allergic to alcohol, and but still with her, I think that one thing with her is like, everybody always keeps asking us like, oh my gosh, what did your kids think about you guys being back together? Like blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, we never had this, our kids progressively saw it. So we never had this big moment one day. We're like, guess what? Mommy and daddy back together. Like we never had to do that because they slowly saw this progression.
Did they ever ask when you guys were apart what was going on?
Yeah. So our daughter, she's a strong little girl. And I mean, she saw it, not so much the boys, but I remember one time, and I told you this, I believe, but it was, you know, through the thick of like when I felt like the most pain, which was for long periods of time. And one night, like I came inside, and the boys were down and asleep already, but I just dropped to the ground, and I was bawling my eyes out, and like in the fetal position, and she came up to me, my daughter, and put her arms around me, and she was like, "It's gonna be okay, Daddy."
Oh.
I'll never forget that moment, because it's just like how this little girl lifted my spirits up, my heart, and so to answer your question, she saw everything, and like that was proof to me that like she was behind the scenes watching and could see everything. And
they witnessed a lot of fighting and yelling, and me being taken away in a cop car, and just a lot. And I think with our daughter's like very cautious because she saw me go back and forth so many times. And so it's almost like I remember at first it was fine the first couple times I went back, you know, but this time I can just, you know, she's a lot more cautious because which makes sense. Like, why wouldn't mommy just leave
again? Totally. That's like, she's at the age where the things that you experience really instill those like long-term beliefs that you have to rectify. So I can.
Yeah. So we're looking on getting her into therapy. I just talked to her doctor about it, but I think it'll be really helpful for her.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
So how sober are you? How many days sober are you now?
I am just making a TikTok video, so I had to look it up on my app. 445 days.
Amazing, girl. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Does it feel like it's stuck this time? Like it feels good?
It really does.
I know it's hard to say, but
yeah, I know. And I'm very confident in my sobriety, and I talk about it. Like I really, honestly, I don't think I'll ever have another drink in my life again. I've never said that before in my life. And I've been dealing with this for, you know, since very young age, when it was apparent that alcohol was a huge problem in my life. But I also know, because like with my history with relapsing, I also know like when I relapsed, it was never something I like thought about.
Sure. You don't plan to do that.
I saw a bottle of alcohol and like, it's so crazy. I just like I sprinted to it and I drank it, and that's how quick, like it was gone. And so I also I'm very confident in my sobriety, but I also know that it could be taken from me at any second. And so very cautious.
And like you always say to me is like, if you have one more drink, the next bottom is more than likely death.
Yeah. I just like, everyone always says like, oh, what would you do if you relapse? I don't even think about that. Like I literally associate relapse with death because that's how serious it was for me. And that's just like the only way. And that helps me in my head, you know?
Yeah.
It's not like,
absolutely.
oh, I'm gonna have a drink and mess up, you know? It's like, I'm gonna go have a drink and I die. And that's
Yeah. Wyland, do you still drink? Do you guys keep alcohol in the house?
Absolutely not.
No, absolutely not. No. So no.
When I first came back in the house though, in November, like it was weird on Thanksgiving. He was like, do you want to come in?
I was out of the loop too as well. I mean, obviously we weren't on good terms. We weren't, but so
we didn't talk for 6 months.
And I had reached a point in my period of healing where there wasn't so much pain any longer. And I was like, I have a drink now. Right. So I had reached that point and my buddy was in town and I remember I had I don't know. So actually, like her drink of choice, something similar to that in the fridge. It didn't even register with me.
Right. And I like open the fridge and I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Like I was so mad. And I think a lot of it for me was just like jealousy almost. Like, first of all, like, oh, I just like, how come you can drink like a normal person and I can't? Yeah. And also like, why would you have something that destroyed our family like in the house? I just like have this, obviously huge resentment towards alcohol for that reason.
Yeah. So Wyland, do you still drink away from Brittany?
No, I don't.
And I honestly, like, I would not be able to be with him. Like, yeah. I even said this even before when I was maybe considering dating at one time. Like, I even said, I don't think I will be able to date someone, at least not for a long time, that drinks because, I don't know how to explain it, but that's just how, that's how much I love alcohol. And it just wouldn't be, I would constantly be jealous or angry or.
No, that makes total sense that you shouldn't, as a recovered addict, be with someone that is, using whatever.
And some people can do it, but
we tried that too.
Yeah.
And so what's it been like once you guys announced that you were getting back together? What's the response been like? Because I know I was shocked and I know a lot of people were shocked because not a lot of people knew. It just really kind of came out of nowhere. And what were some of the positive and negative responses? Because I know a lot of people on TikTok and social media love to chime in with their opinions. So what do you think was some of the harsher criticisms that you guys received?
I mean, for one, it was the way I addressed it from the beginning, because I wanted to be like straight up, because I had been telling my story on TikTok. So everybody knew, everything, my side of the story. And so right in the video, I straight up addressed, that domestic violence, addiction, divorce, blah, blah, what did I even say? I said, did I say anything about abuse? I don't know, but I like fully put that in text on the video. That probably was not the best thing to do, because everybody just automatically assumed that he beat my ass for years, and I was, it was that situation where it wasn't. First of all, then it left a lot of explaining on our part, which was really hard for me to do, because he was not physically abusive to me, but doesn't mean that any of the other stuff, the emotional abuse and everything else, wasn't just as bad, because it was. And so that was really hard for me to talk about, because I didn't want to make anyone think oh, just because my person's not beating me, then it must be not that bad. And it's funny because the domestic violence situation, I'm the one that had the domestic violence restraining order on me, just because
people didn't know that.
It was it was a verbal, but it was just everybody just assumed it was him.
And for a minute there, I felt okay, I'm the bad guy here, and that's okay, because I know that she accepts me, and I don't care what these people think about me, as long as she's willing to work with me, and when we're together, I'm happy. That's good for me. I can care less what these people think about
Well, that's really big of you, because a lot of people would be like, wait, make sure you're telling the story the absolute correct way, or make sure I'm not painted in a bad light. To be honest, you guys, and I love Brittany Wyland. This is obviously the first time I'm meeting you, but I appreciate you being here and being open and honest. And I love Brittany and her message and what she stands for, but it's very clear from listening to both of the episodes that both of you guys had a lot of toxic traits that were triggering each other and making the relationship very unhealthy. You know, it was on both sides that a lot of work needed to be done. So Brittany, what do you think you've done on your side that's other than like getting sober, obviously, that's allowed you guys to come back together in a healthy way?
I mean, it's crazy because like the sobriety thing is just huge for me. I like can't even explain it because I was so sick and gone in that disease. But I think just like I don't know, just having almost a change of heart. I always talked about men like him can't change, you know, and it's very, you know, very hypocritical of me to be saying those things about him when I was changing as we speak. I've been a person to change. And so just for me to have like a more openness that like he was willing to, you know, work on himself and accept things. And yeah, I don't know, just, I feel like just another like me finding a new form of respect. I feel like we didn't really respect each other at all.
Yeah.
And our relationship and, you know, just me finding that I wanted that back.
Oh, I wish everybody could see you guys smiling at each other right now. So tell me exactly where you guys are at now. Cause I know when you first posted the picture on Instagram, it was like, we're going to date, we're taking it slow. Like we're not rushing anything. We're not living together. So where has the situation progressed to over the past couple months?
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, our response after we announced this was way better than we thought it would be. Like,
good.
You know, there was a couple hate pages made and people trying to expose us. And I'm like, you cannot expose people who are literally like, I'm showing you my mugshot.
I cannot even deal that like people have enough time to go make pages. Not like, oh, I'm going to leave a shitty troll comment, but like make pages.
Oh yeah, there was actual like hate pages made for us.
They're fake. They're acting like it's like
unreal.
So the response has been a lot better, honestly, and it's just the few comments that were bad were pretty bad. But anyway, so moving forward, so we kind of went into this like, you know, we're going to take this slow. We're just going to like act like boyfriend and girlfriend, even though we are technically husband and wife, which was so confusing to people. Are like, wait, you didn't get a divorce? You said you did. I'm like, oh.
It worked for us though. It's what we needed.
Yeah.
And I think it would, regardless of what anybody else thought, like that's what we did that helped us kind of reestablish that foothold for our relationship and to kind of
totally. Yeah.
And so we both still have our own houses, but I'm pretty much over at his all the time. But it's hard being back here because this is house we live in together. Like even when we were just talking, I'm like looking around, like remembering, like that's when I had the psychosis there. That's when like it's really hard and
triggers for sure.
Yeah. So he's out of his house at the end of the month, and then he's gonna move in with me and my mom for a month, and then we are looking for a place together. We just don't really know what we want to do. But we know
it's still new and you guys are still like navigating the being back together as a couple and as a family. And what are you playing with on your finger there, Britt?
Oh yeah. My ring. I took us off like almost 2 years ago. It was May 2019. I took it off, and just the other day, it was so random. I'm like very dramatic and over the top, and I like big things, and like, so I was like hoping maybe he would like do this, maybe get me a new ring, or maybe do this whole proposal. And that's
propose.
And no, I was just getting ready in the bathroom one day and I saw my ring and I was like, I just asked him, I was like, should I put my ring back on? He was like, yeah, just some random thing in the morning. I was like, okay. So I put my ring back on, and and he can't put his on because I threw his in the ocean, but
stop. When did you throw his in the ocean?
That it was like when I started TikTok, because I made a whole TikTok video about it, me throwing the ring in the ocean. Like,
oh my God.
I know, just very, very dramatic of me. And Yeah.
Well, I think I can see that you guys, have this real connection, and it's really beautiful to, hear Brittany's side of the story and then have this kind of preconceived notion of what I'm going to be talking to with Wyland, and then seeing that you've really done some work and grown and changed a lot from past behaviors, and then, seeing that Brittany had her side of the street too, that was drowning in some booze back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful to see you guys, be a family again. And I'm sure your kids are freaking over the moon about it.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing. I feel like there's just this is pretty rare that like this happens. So I feel I'm really happy that we, went this route, because like he really is like my best friend. We have it's crazy, the hobbies. It's like we're very much alike. Like we don't like argue about like anything, like what we're gonna do, what we're gonna eat, like we're very much a lot alike. And
Yeah.
it just,
I mean, but we're so different, but
yeah,
like personality wise, like obviously you can see, I'd be labeled as the introvert, but nonetheless, like I've always felt like that's what she makes me feel alive, like her energy.
Yeah, I think I like bring out this side of him, that he doesn't really get just on his own. And then with like his side on me, like it calms me down a little bit,
Right. Reins you in.
Slow down at times. So
tell everybody where they can find each of you on social media, please.
Well, both on TikTok and Instagram, but my handle is Brittany Jade. And his is WT Zabo. We need to change that still. I say we, it's so funny. I'm like very much behind his TikTok account. And I think some people are like, people don't realize that. I'm like, do you not realize like we get to pick and choose what you see? And like, I'm definitely a lot of help in his social media. So yeah, you can find us on there.
Awesome. Wyland, thank you for coming on. And, I know it's not hard to I know it is hard to come on to a podcast that's predominantly women based and get a little grilled on your past actions and relationships. But I really appreciate you being so open. And I'm so happy that you guys have like found your way back to each other. Never in a million freaking years when we did that first interview did I see this ending coming. And I am so happy for you guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Really crazy ride with these two. I hope you guys got a lot out of that interview and the way that people can grow and change and come back together and take responsibility for their own shit. I think that's the biggest lesson that I got out of it, was that it is possible to come to the table and be like, shit, I'm sorry. This is what I did that was fucked up. And let's move forward together. Because when you can take responsibility for your side of the street and make sure that you're keeping your side of the street clean, really great fucking things can happen. I'm so happy to see them happy and happy for their kids. And I'm wishing them all the best. If you guys were not aware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So next week, we are going to dive into all things therapy, trauma, and really how we make sure that we are taking care of our mental health on a day-to-day basis, because it is so fucking important to make sure we are not letting that falter. If you guys are not signed up for the subscription, we are having a fucking blast already. These mini bonus episodes, you guys have been so much fun to do. So if you are not already signed up to hang out in the Facebook group with us and get the mini bonus episodes every week, you can do that at Patreon/FML Talk. And as always, make sure you are hanging out with us on Instagram at FML Talk Podcast. You can get all your merch and signed copies of Eat Pray FML on the website, which is eatprayfml.com. And make sure if you are posting your pictures, you are hashtagging FML Talk Boss Babes so that we can share your photos on our page as well. Get ready for some mental health goodness, y'all. I will see you next week. Cheers.